everybody, welcome back to the channel, and as always, before we get into everything, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you always know when you get my videos and you can watch them. And please subscribe. I want to grow the subscribers and grow this channel, so I would appreciate it if you did that. Now, with that out the way, today I'm going to be doing another My Top 10 video, and today's top 10 video is going to be my top 10 comic book movies. Now, these are my top 10 movies that are my personal favorite when it comes to the comic book, superhero, graphic novel genre. And before I get into all the top 10, I'll give some of my honorable mentions. It's going to be a few more honorable mentions compared to my top 10 2021 movies of the year list, because it was so hard narrowing down this list, but I finally got it. And this list is actually going to be in order from 10 to 1, because I finally hunkered down and really nailed it out of what is my top 10. And like I said, this is my personal top 10 favorite movies. Not saying these are the top 10 best comic book movies, I'm just saying that these are my personal favorite. So with that out the way, let's get into everything. Now, first, before I get into my top 10, I want to mention some honorable mentions that didn't make the top 10, but I couldn't go without mentioning. Now, first, I want to mention Dredd. Now, Dredd is a movie that not many people remember, but this was a fantastic, the raid-like movie in a one building, and Carl Urban is an amazing job in this role. He keeps the helmet on the whole entire time, and this movie is psychedelic, it is bloody, it is extreme, it is violent, and it is so good. And I wish more people would see this movie, and I really hope that it gets a sequel. Now, another honorable mention is Man of Steel, which kicked off the DCEU. And I personally love Man of Steel. I love what Zack Snyder brought new to this character, and brought this character in a different light, and showed that he can be more than just the bright, shining armor Boy Scout guy that we all know, and really brought him down to earth and gave him existential crisis of his place in the world, especially when he is an alien and foreign to the planet, and what that would be like growing up in the Midwest, growing up with Midwestern parents who are very secretive to themselves, that in actuality would be the case, and him slowly growing to that character of someone who becomes Superman, and is very much an origin of this person, Clark Kent, becoming a hero and becoming a Superman, and the trials and mistakes he might make doing that. From the visual effects to the fight scenes to just the perfect casting of Henry Cavill, I really enjoyed this movie. Now, another honorable mention from Zack Snyder as well would be Watchmen. I never read the graphic novel, but Watchmen just to me feels so much like something that was ahead of its time, really, and more so akin to movies now, and the breaking down and analyzing of the superhero genre, which you get from like shows like The Boys. But The Watchmen was really the first of its kind of that narrative, movie wise, and just showing this wonderful story and intricate story of these very, very fascinating characters. So from all those aspects, I really enjoyed Watchmen. Now, another honorable mention is Thor Ragnarok. Thor was not one of my favorite characters from the MCU, and the first two movies did not really catch my eye. But when Thor Ragnarok came out, this movie completely shifted the character of Thor. Taika Waititi, what he did with this movie, he reinvented Thor for the MCU. Like, the impact he had on this is still continuing to this day with the upcoming movie Thor Love and Thunder. Like, this movie was hilarious, it was funny, it was bright, it felt like a comic come to life with how many vivid colors and everything that he inserted into this movie. So Thor Ragnarok is truly, truly great, and I really love it. Another honorable mention I have is The Suicide Squad, which I won't talk too much about because I have a full review on the channel, but I love this movie. This is a great ensemble movie. It is dark, it is funny, it is absolutely amazing. So that's pretty much all I oh, actually, one more honorable mention I do have is Avengers Endgame. Now, Avengers Endgame is a culmination of 11 years and truly is the pinnacle of fan loyalty, fan service, and just the finishing of an entire arc of a franchise. The first arc, actually, because the MCU is still going, but just number one, this is a top three theater experience for me all time. And just to finish every little thing that they started in '08 with the first Iron Man to culminate in this movie and to have the splash page final fight scene and everything leading up to it and going down memory lane with the time travel and everything like that. This is just the pinnacle of what the MCU set out to be, and saw this twice and still cried both occasions in this movie at multiple times. So Avengers Endgame is another honorable mention that I couldn't go without saying. So with that out the way, now I'm going to get into my top 10 comic book movies of all time. Now, coming at number 10, which was a very much a struggle because I went back and forth on so many movies for this last spot, but I ultimately came on Guardians of the Galaxy. Speaking of, which is directed by James Gunn, and I remember the trailers for this movie coming out, and number one, being totally obsessed with the song that they had in the trailer that goes like "Ooga Shaka, Ooga Shaka." I absolutely love that song. But speaking of the movie, when I saw this movie, this was such a heartwarming, fantastic, and fun movie. These were a cast of characters that no one had any clue about, and James Gunn did a perfect job. He is a wonderful ensemble director. I don't know how he does it, but he is a master at introducing characters that we don't necessarily know or might not even necessarily like and making you like them by the end of the movie. And that's what he does with Guardians of the Galaxy. This was a new energy and a very cosmic movie that the MCU had never done before, and James Gunn did a phenomenal job of introducing us to these cast of characters and making us care by the end about a raccoon and a talking tree. So at number 10, I gotta give it to Guardians of the Galaxy because this was amazing, and it's probably still in my top 10, even top 5 of MCU movies. Now, moving on to the next one. Now, coming in at number 9 is Marvel's and by James Mangold's Logan. Now, Logan was the truly one of the greatest send-offs for a character that you could ask for. After 20 years of Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine and playing in these movies, we finally got a movie that was true to the character of its violence and messiness of this character in Logan. It was rated R and it was bloody, it was violent. This is a Western that does not hold back on the character, and it is truly a great send-off for the character because you would get flashes of him going berserker in certain X-Men movies and whatnot, and also a movie that I think is underrated and unappreciated, The Wolverine, which is the one right before this one. But you fully get Logan fleshed out in this send-off, and it truly is one of the best comic book movies, and also truly is shaping and helps the comic book genre be more things. So at 9, I really enjoyed Logan. Coming in at number 8, speaking of shaping the comic book genre and pushing it forward for what it could be, is Deadpool. Deadpool, which was directed by Frank Miller, was a match made in heaven when you think about casting with Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Like, it was, besides like Logan and Hugh Jackman and Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. This is a casting that can never be topped. This was perfect, and this movie is bloody and hilarious and takes the genre into something more that it can be with bad mouth and dirty comedy and the hilarious jokes and the fourth wall breaking. Every aspect of this movie was just new and fresh and absolutely phenomenal. And I still remember seeing it in theaters and laughing so much at all the jokes, and it is so quotable. Like even more so than I love the second one too, but like this first one was the one that is stuck with everyone, and it is so funny and so quotable. So yeah, at number 8 is Deadpool, and it's phenomenal. So coming in at number 7 might be familiar because the other one that people debate on which one is better, I mentioned in my honorable mentions. But at number 7, I have Infinity War. Now, from a pure fan service and just ending an arc wise, I like Endgame. But as for movie wise and arcs within the movie and emotionally, the impact it left me with the cheers and the lows, I have to say Infinity War making my top 10 because I still remember that ending and how impactful it had with me. Even if we had the knowledge that more than likely these characters come back, they did such a phenomenal job of making you cheer on the heroes we've been with 10 years, and with characters like Thor and Captain America and Tony and even some newer ones that they introduced, but just overall making you hinge on them stopping Thanos and Thanos with his arc and really being his movie for it to end that way. The impact of this movie just was more than Endgame, and just film wise, it just does more for me. So I have to have 7 it at 7, and also a phenomenal job from the Russo brothers, who after Winter Soldier, which is my favorite MCU movie, it they really took a hold of this franchise with the Avengers movies and really did a phenomenal job of kicking off this saga with Thanos with Infinity War. So that is my number 7. So coming in at number 6, and this is where we truly get of why I say this is my personal top 10 comic book movies, because at number 6 I have Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. Now, I have mulled over this movie so much and watched this movie so many times, and I've come to the conclusion. Number one, yes, indeed, it is superior to the theatrical version, even though I did personally like and actually love the theatrical version. But this Ultimate Edition, which is 20 minutes or so longer and is 3 hours, and really fleshes out the story a little bit more, I truly believe is phenomenal and is great. And I truly love what he does with these characters and the avenues that he takes them. He lets these characters be more than just two-dimensional characters and really gives them problems and angst and situations that necessarily these characters in the past haven't been put upon. And I really love the culmination of the theology and the philosophy of it and the thematic levels it has with these characters, and is there a need for Superman and his purpose in the world, or should he do it, and Batman getting to this point of him just being tired and seeing nothing changes and really getting jaded. All these aspects I really enjoyed and really liked how he viewed these characters and these situations that he put these characters in. And I just think that this was something that he was trying to do something new, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciated him trying to do something new with these characters, but also harking back and taking inspiration from comics and everything like that too. Very much so The Dark Knight Returns with Bat Miller, and how he's older and grizzled and stuff like that, and just in a different headspace in his life. So, and also, P.S. like the warehouse fight scene with Batman is probably one of the best if not the best Batman fight scenes ever. So overall, I just really enjoyed this movie, and I highly recommend watching the Ultimate Edition. It is a little bit longer, but it is truly worth it. So now coming in at number 5, speaking of Zack Snyder again, is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, this 4-hour masterpiece of a movie is one of my favorites because number one, it takes me back to when I was a kid, Saturdays or whatever, watching the Justice League animated show with all these characters interacting with each other and them having a evil force or a big bad that they have to stop. And it really does flesh out all these characters and show their growth, especially characters like Batman and Superman who comes back in this movie and has a newfound hope and energy about himself, and for some people is the Superman that they was waiting for with Henry Cavill. But just overall, the character arcs and them slowly learning how to work together and come together to eventually fight Steppenwolf, and also the little nuggets of setup that possibly could happen, or maybe not, who knows. But in this movie with Darkseid and everything like that, it just overall was truly a wonderful experience with the comic book movie with my personal characters that I love so much and grew up watching. And hands down, one of the best and memorable scenes was the Flash using the Speed Force to run back in time and save the day. That was truly a great comic book movie moment for me. But this movie just overall gave me everything I wanted from these characters that I grew up loving. So that is my number 5. So coming in at number 4 is a movie that I actually recently just saw and actually have a full review up on the channel if you want to see it. But my number 4 is Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this movie, number 1, is another top 3 theater experience for me when it comes to just cheer moments and just pure emotion. This is a 20 years buildup of these multiple Spider-Man movies that I've seen repeatedly. Spider-Man was my character Marvel-wise when I was growing up. Spidey was my main Marvel character. I love Spider-Man. So going into this movie, it was phenomenal seeing the culmination of these 3 Spider-Man who all bring a different thing to the role of Spider-Man. But also, this was, from the MCU-wise, the most purest, thematically rich form of Spider-Man and what it means to be Spider-Man, of helping others even when it comes at the detriment of Peter Parker. And I really enjoy that aspect of it, and bringing back the OG villains, and especially like characters like Green Goblin, who were amazing, and just almost getting a Sinister Six like movie. Just all aspects of this movie was absolutely phenomenal, and it's so rewatchable, and it's definitely going to hold up long after now it's been released. So that is my number 4. Now, coming at number 3, which is a movie I mentioned earlier, which is my favorite MCU movie still, and I really don't know what's going to top it. It might be what I just mentioned, Spider-Man No Way Home. It might be something new, I don't know. But for now, just Captain America, The Winter Soldier is truly number 1, the best MCU movie, and in my top 3 for best comic book movies ever. Just what they did with this character of Captain America, who can be very much black and white. They truly put you in his shoes and made you understand his reasoning and his thought process of why he is Captain America and why he is the person that got this serum. And it's not always if on the government side or what is the right thing to do, which he always knows. He always knows what the right thing is to do, even if that necessarily is the wrong thing to do within the world. He's always going to stand firm in his beliefs and his conviction. And just from a genre standpoint, this was really much the moving and pivoting of the MCU, really much doing very niche genre movies within their MCU movies. And this was one of the very first of that, with it being very much like a spy thriller type movie. And then eventually you get your Thor Ragnaroks and stuff like that, that also plays in multiple genres, being like a comedy and whatnot. But this was really much the Kickstarter of that, and just it is the best action choreography wise movie in the MCU as well. Besides, I will say Shang-Chi, but this was the first to really have great action, great fighting scenes, as well as a good story, which is had long lasting effects within the MCU with Hydra and Shield. So overall, this was and still is my favorite MCU movie, and is my number 3. Now coming into my top 2, this was so hard because in a future list, this will be the same thing. But for right now, speaking about my top 10 comic book movies, these two I struggled with back and forth. And I ultimately came to, with my number 2 being The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight today still stands up as one of the greatest comic book movies ever for everyone, and one of the greatest films of all time. And it just so happens to be one of my favorite characters, Batman. And just from the standpoint of the Oscar winning and well deserved performance from Heath Ledger as a Joker, to the layers of the story, with them truly capturing the genius, the mad genius of the Joker, and him planning and outsmarting Batman at times, to the thematic depth of Batman and him being what Gotham needs as a martyr, as someone who will fall on the sword for them, because that is ultimately what Bruce and Batman is about, of helping Gotham and making a better place, even if it's at the detriment of himself. And just this movie did so many things for the comic book genre, for movies, for superheroes, everything. This truly is a milestone in comic book history, and it is a cherry on top. It was my favorite character, and a movie that was done so well with the practical effects and the fights, which ultimately did get better from Batman Begins, is an upgrade. And just from Christian Bale's performance to the supporting cast, every aspect of this movie just is absolute gold and still stands up today. So that is my number 2, The Dark Knight. Now that we finally got to the end and my number 1, this is a perfect example of why I call this my top 10, because it is my personal favorite, and what my personal tastes are, and what I'm looking for when it comes to comic book movies. So for my number 1 is The Batman 2022, and I've struggled with this because it's so recent, and I've seen it so soon, and I've already seen it 3 times. So I really got to mull over my thoughts on this movie and why I like it so much. And truly, it is the perfect combination of a movie still having a story and a film, but also being the most, to me, purest and comic book accurate Batman in my eyes, and what I think of and what my perception of Batman is. So from that standpoint alone, this is truly my favorite comic book movie of all time. From the detective story, from just the very pure Batman moments, this movie was so highly enjoyable, and I plan on rewatching it for so many times forever. This movie is truly amazing, and if you want to hear more thoughts on it, I do have a full review of it up on the channel that I'll have a link in the end of the video. But just from a comic book standpoint, this is truly my favorite comic book movie, and I know it's recent, but man, it has stuck with me, and I highly enjoy it over all of these great movies that I just listed. So that is my top 10 favorite comic book movies. And please comment below. Let me know, what is your favorite comic book movies? Is it any on this list? Is my list completely off? Would you have something different? Even though it's a personal list and everybody can have something different, what is yours? Whatever it is, comment that in the below, and like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.